Welcome back, guys, to the Beyond Condition podcast. Now, today is probably the most special episode yet. I have Mama Bear on the podcast, and I've spoken about Mum so much on this podcast. So it's not only going to give more context to our relationship and the challenges we face together, but also I really want to speak to Mum about what it feels like to watch someone prep. So I've spoken before about when I first had the conversation with Mum, and I was like, Mum, I'm going to be a bodybuilder. And I've spoken about this on the pod before. When you your reply to me was, are you going to look like Jodie Marsh? And I was like, I don't think so. So that, I guess, that sort of highlights when you don't really know what bodybuilding is, like both of us before I started it, it's like, what would that even look like? So I guess for you, it was like, this seems a bit outrageous almost, and trying to work out what that would look like.
I think it was like, I was thinking you're going to be like full of muscles and lose your sort of femininity.
Yeah, because as you now know, there's more categories and more to it, isn't there? So there's like bikini. So for me, it's like based on hair, makeup, and your physique. And then the categories go up. And then, there's like female bodybuilding, which is what you probably was foreseeing, that you, like you say, well muscled physique, which I guess for you, was it a bit like, well, this is a bit scary?
I was thinking, oh no. Yeah, it was, oh no, I don't need to be like that. There's a lot more to bodybuilding than I kind of realised. That there's a whole lot to it. It's not just, oh, I'm going to go on stage and be a bodybuilder. It's it's a real long journey.
Yeah, because I think obviously when I first started it, I spoke about this on a podcast actually, that transition from being like a normal person, so things like having a takeaway or eating what you want and not monitoring things, to then be like, okay, I'm a bodybuilder now. And I think sometimes as bodybuilders we forget there's an impact on family members as well. So suddenly I'm saying to you, well, I can't eat that, and then you're like, why? And it's quite hard to communicate that. And I guess it's probably quite hard from your position to go, well, why can't we do that, without it feeling like you're questioning what I'm trying to do, if that makes sense.
Well, it's being supportive to your choice, but it's hard. It's kind of like trying to understand, which I understood more down the line, of why it has to be that way. And if it's your journey and what you choose, to support you in that, and for it to not impact everybody else in the family.
Yeah, because this is hard, isn't it? And I certainly, when I reflect on when I was living at home, when I was prepping, like I think I was so in it and I really wanted to do well in the sport, that I would have been short-tempered, I would have been low on energy, I would have felt like, why is everyone else eating normal food, as it were, and I can't, rather than accepting that it was my choice. So it's definitely something I try and speak about on the podcast, because you've chosen to do that, and that doesn't mean that I expect you to eat what I eat. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because like sometimes, like I suppose you have scenarios where you might have a cake, but I wouldn't around you, because I would feel that it wouldn't be fair. Well, not fair, but I'd feel, because you can't, I'd do it when you're not around. And I suppose really, maybe I should have.
Yeah, it is a hard one, because yeah, you don't, I guess from your point of view, you really want to have compassion for what the athlete's doing, but then it's like you've almost got to start behaving in a different way around food yourself, and the knock-on effect there could actually be something that maybe you don't realize when you're competing and you're doing a prep. Actually, other people sort of having to go somewhere else to eat and stuff, I guess for you it's quite hard.
I think as time went on, I understood it more. And I think, like, it's times, when we went out for family meals and you take your food prepped in a container and would be really sort of like thinking about what people are going to say. And I would say to you, well, if they know you, the person, and they support you in what you're doing, then they will understand and they won't make a judgment on that. So I think it's about having people around you that want to support you. and understand like what you're going through.
Because I think probably as well, one of the biggest things for you being my parent, and of course our close relationship, that has withstood a lot of challenges, you're wanting to care for me. And then I guess we could talk about how it feels to then see me go from like a normal person to, I remember we had that conversation where it was like, you're looking quite skinny now. And then I said to you, can you say toned? And we always have that joke now, but how does that feel seeing, you know, that massive dramatic change from your point of view? Because there's going to be people listening that are potentially in a prep and they're not considering what that actually feels like as a mum to see your daughter or your son suddenly, you know, lose a lot of weight.
Especially near sort of competition time, you know, when you're on a calorie deficit, you know, and you do go down a lot in size, it's quite worrying. But because we chatted about it, I understood it was okay. And that after competition, that, you know, if you decided to like have some time out, that you could build yourself up again. But it is quite worrying, daughter, as a parent to see, and probably for people around you as well, friends, etc. So I think, yeah, it's I mean, it was 5 years, the journey from when you started to your peak, and it's you know, your commitment and I admire you for your commitment and determination. I mean, it wouldn't matter if you came home at 9 o'clock at night and you were upset, sort of had an argument with Kieran or whatever, and you were like really down, you'd still get the pots and pans out and cook them fresh. Whereas, like, I would just go and get a packet of biscuits. However you felt, whatever you were up against, you would always still stay focused.
Yeah, it is. That certainly is something I've explored on here as well, because we can talk about that, seeing me in what we would say an unhappy marriage, like that was quite hard for you to view as well. And then, like you say, you know, if something's happened with Kieran, it was like that unleashed, okay, so I'm going to do more to really pursue the bodybuilding to try and mask the unhappiness there. And I think, again, it's like, from your point of view, how hard that must have been to know that it wasn't right. You know, obviously when I stepped away from it, we had a lot of conversations about, I knew that it wasn't right from the start.
Yeah, it's I didn't quite realise how bad it was. And how, you know, how you kept going really mentally, and the sort of challenges by still trying to maintain, you know, looking how you want to look. And as a mum, I would just be there, no matter what, just be there, you know, just ring me up, whatever I can do to help. Doesn't matter whatever else is going on, that I would just be there as a support, emotionally, picking you up from Three Bridges after you'd had a weekend out away every Sunday.
Yeah, I mean, during that time, that example there was when I came away from the marriage and made that decision. And weekends, I remember so many conversations where you were like, look, you need to get out of the house, because we were still living together at the time to, you know, sell the house or whatever. And you were like, you know, if I can do anything to facilitate you getting out of that environment, then I'll do that. And I would say, you know, our relationship is probably to a certain degree different from other people, because, you know, how open we are, like, you know, everything. I don't feel like I need to hide anything from you. But again, I think that probably evolved when I stopped hiding how unhappy I was with Kieran, because no one knew, because you put a face on. But I certainly think that the way that you have dealt with challenges in your life and how you've always put a brave face on, I probably would say that that's a trait I've picked up from you.
Yeah, you probably do, because you don't want people to know things aren't right. You keep thinking, oh, it might change, and you keep going. But at the end of the day, if you're not happy, there is a way out, and you've shown that.
Yeah,
and I'm very proud of you.
Well, you know how that makes me feel. I'm going to try not to cry on this pod. I do sometimes get emotional because, you know, when you do look back and what we have been through, the challenges we've faced, and then we've come through all of that, I think that people take inspiration from that because, you know, as a child and growing up, for a parent like yourself, a single parent trying to do everything, I always say to Matt, like, you did everything to put food on the table because that's sort of how I remember it. It's like you needed to do that to feed us and keep us sheltered. And it is a shame when I guess those relationships break down rather than strengthen. And I think that when we reflect back, it's like we've actually got closer through the challenges rather than further apart.
Yeah.
It's a special thing because, again, when you talk about support from, you know, for a competitor from their point of view, now I've put the monster top on that you brought me from the Arnolds because it's a really good example of when you come to the shows to watch me compete, and you always come if you can, and that in itself is something that's a really special thing because you're prioritizing it. But when you get me like a monster top, or you know, you used to come around with some cans of Monster, or you get me some protein bars or whatever it is, that's your way of being able to go, okay, so this is your choice, but I want to support that. I guess that's sort of a way to engage and show that you're supporting rather than be like, right, we're going to go out for food or whatever if I can't do that.
Yeah. It's you know, being on the journey with you and going to see you compete is, I feel very humbled that you want me to be a part of it. That if you wanted me to be there.
It's always like I always say this about when you compete, because you've been there from the first season to my last prep, and the first couple of seasons, you'll remember, it didn't even feel like the judges really looked at me, and that's a really dark place to be in following the show because it's very hard and you see what goes into it. And what I always say on here is that the judges are looking at people on stage, but they don't know what you've done to get there. So it's like a really hard way to, you know, you're thinking, oh, Sarah looks really good, but then the judges may not award that. How does that feel?
Yeah.
Because you've actually seen a judge on their phone and stuff, haven't you? And you were like, but they're not even looking at you.
Yeah, that's very hard because with some federations, I feel like it's fixed in some ways. And like, you know, you do all that the training to get ready to compete, and you have like, you know, a short amount of time on stage to show what you've achieved in that time, and a very short amount of time to show judges. And when you see how they operate and how they've already kind of picked out who they're going to place, is very, very hard. And I think it's I really felt for you because I know how much you put into it, and not saying you were the best, you were the worst, etc.
Yeah.
But the fact that, like, as I say, I saw one of the judges on his phone, he wasn't even looking at the stage, and that's quite hurtful to see that, because it's not fair. Everybody who goes on stage should have their time to show what they've achieved, and for that to be recognised. You know.
Yeah, because you feel the prep as well, don't you? You know, those times when I am really low on energy and I'm getting a lot leaner, like,
yeah,
from a care point of view, it's a hard position to be in because it's like, wow, this person's like literally doing everything to get on that stage. And like you say, it's such a short time on stage.
Time to show what you've achieved.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, if we talk about that a little bit more, I didn't know this would come up, but it's really interesting because when you see that happen, that scenario you just said, did you have like thoughts of, what am I going to do when I know that Sarah hasn't, you know, placed or won? How am I going to communicate with her? Or was it more like you just see how I react?
Well, what I think the best way is to not emphasize on that, but to see how you are, like when we first see you come from backstage, see how you are, give you a big hug and let you say what you want to say about it, rather than mentioning it like initially and then maybe talk about it later. Because obviously it's, you know, it's a huge disappointment, especially when you don't think it's fair. So I think, yeah, just seeing how you are and allowed you to, you know,
Get it
start
on.
talking about it and then kind of raise any
Mm,
sort of talk on it.
yeah, because
But
it is.
I also, it was very hard when you did one show, when you asked for feedback, and was that UKUP?
It was UKBFF.
UKBFF, and the judge said, "Oh, I've been working 15 hours. I haven't got time to talk to you." And I thought that was very, very unfair, and I know that impacted you quite a lot.
Yeah,
And I took some of that on board.
yeah, it is. It's hard because, like you say, what goes into it, certainly in the first few seasons, you know, your whole life feels like it's on the line for that 5-10 minutes on stage, and it
Yeah,
becomes so intrinsic. And for me, I think, because, you know, throughout childhood and everything that's happened throughout our lives together, I've never really had control as such. So then bodybuilding became this like controlling place for me. And then, you know, I did everything and more if I could. So then you get to the stage and you're like, I really want feedback to progress as an athlete so I know what to work on. And then,
yeah,
you know, it's like the end of the season and you don't know what the judges are looking for you to then come back better. And I know
yeah,
there's many conversations we've had around what I need to do to move forward, but also, you know, for anyone that's listening, if you do a competition and something like this happens, or you don't perhaps get awarded for your work by accolades, it's always remembering, like Mum said, that, you know, there's so much achievement to be found in the journey. Now, if someone is listening and they are feeling this way after a show, what advice would you give them? So, you know, would you say to talk to people? What do you think?
I would say give it a few days to digest, you know, all that's happened, the build up to the show, and maybe not placing, and then having the mind of, I'm not going to let this knock me down. I'm going to keep going because there are opportunities out there for me, and it may take a little while, a few weeks, but then as one door closes, another door opens. So I think, you know, is take the knocks along the way, however hard it is.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it makes you stronger.
Yeah, it does. And you can see why you have given me the mindset I've got, because that is my sort of mythology around life and when challenges come up. And I think in bodybuilding, you can feel quite isolated and alone, particularly if you're doing what I was doing, you know, masking unhappiness with my previous marriage,
Yeah,
because, you know, you suddenly feel like you're part of this really amazing thing, because bodybuilding's super, super cool. And you've obviously watched me progress and be able to become successful in the sport. When I
yeah.
won my first show, how did that feel?
Well, when they did the down to the last three places, and because obviously leading up to when they do the judging and you get called back, it's like you're sort of on your seat, but you're like the emotions and everything you kind of go through, you kind of like, oh no, no. And then like when it's down to like second place, and it's like, and then when you realise you'd actually won and got the gold medal, it was like, oh my God, I was so overwhelmed, emotional. Yeah, it was an amazing feeling. Yeah. So happy for you and so proud. Yeah.
Mm.
It's hard to put into words.
Yeah, because it was like you shared every season with me, when, like, we talk about not placing and not even feel like the judges sort of looked at me. And like you said, you know, when we actually would talk about it, it's not about saying, well, you were the best on stage, you should have won. It was
Yeah.
more, you know, I needed direction of what to do to become more competitive. And luckily I was able to do that with Stephen, etc. And
Yeah.
what, you know, all those seasons that went into then winning that show, it was just like, and the first thing I did was look in the audience at you, and there's been moments when I've also looked at Papa and been like, and I
Yeah,
can see him crying and trying to shout my name, but he can't 'cause he's crying, and you're like, for God's sake, he's crying again.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
And it, I
yeah,
guess as well, like when, if and when you win a show, it almost solidifies it was worth it, which is what you've said. You know, one thing happens and then that can lead to another. And I always try and get across that actually when you, if and when you do win a show, it is worth it, but a lot can have
yeah.
to go, you know, 5 years.
But it's very easy, would be very easy to give up. So if you try and have the mindset of that determination to keep going and take those knocks, you will get there one day. It may take a few years, but you're living proof of that.
Yeah, it still feels
I've seen
surreal.
first picture of you when you first competed to 5 years on.
Yeah.
Is the transformation is unbelievable.
I bet it feels a bit weird for you, like it does for me. I look and I'm like, oh, is that me? And probably similar, that's my daughter.
But even now, we've got some like new people started on my team, sort of in their 20s. I'm always showing people pictures of you, competitions and that, and that's your daughter. Wow, she looks amazing, and I'm so proud. You know, when people, I'm always talking about it and showing them. You know, they've shared the journey with me actually, and always when there's been competitions, you know, we're rooting for Sarah. I hope she does well. So yeah, even last week I was showing someone a picture of you when you won in Mexico. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
universe.
that was that. Obviously, you know, we only had that transition of, I had like 4 days, didn't I? I didn't even have a passport, and you were like, right, I'll speak to the passport office, we'll get you there. And then there was that like qualifying and winning the rhinos. I mean, that was probably my most competitive lineup, wasn't it? Because there was a lot of girls on that
Yeah,
stage.
yeah. That's what you can go. We look after the dogs. You can go, and you had to go up. You had no passport on the Sunday night, and on the Tuesday morning you were going up to London to pick it up from the passport office, ready to fly on the Wednesday. I mean, it was like we didn't have time to sort of stop. It was go, go, go. But you got there,
Yeah, yeah.
made it.
Well, you said to me, didn't you, there isn't an option, and I didn't feel there was an option. Obviously, Kieran being the way he was, unfortunately, was risk assessing the whole thing, and it was like, I've qualified for Miss Universe in Mexico, and I can't
Yeah.
not go.
You know me, where there's a will, there's a way. Whatever it took, we got that appointment and it happened. And I would have gone to London if I had to with you, you know.
Yeah,
But
yeah,
yeah, you know, if you want something or need something, as I say, where there's a will, there's a way. You know, and we did it. We did it, yeah. Joint effort.
yeah. It always is, because we are a team, and that's why sharing this journey is so important to me with you. Because although you couldn't come to Mexico because logistically with work and everything, you know, it wasn't like okay, so we've got time to plan. And your first thought was, how can we go to Mexico? So I knew you wanted to be there. But how did it
Yeah,
feel
yeah.
when I did video call you and say that I'd won Miss Universe?
Oh, I remember it was hours had gone by and I knew you'd already competed and I thought, oh, is it good news, bad news? I was falling asleep. I was downstairs, upstairs, had the phone with me, waiting, and then all of a sudden I was upstairs with the phone when you rang. I remember shouting out, it was about 11 o'clock at night, shouting out to Papa, she's won. And he was going, what? Oh. Yeah, oh
Awesome.
yeah. Those hours seemed like days waiting to get that call.
Yeah.
But I knew there'd be a reason because obviously, yeah.
Well,
But
you
yeah,
know
it
what
was
it's like at a show.
incredible.
The
And that,
shows go quick, don't they? And then, you know, I always say to you, have you got your packed lunchbox? Because it seems like something silly, but I actually say this to people that I work with, you know, people that are supporting you. One, tell them that the show may run on till late, but also tell them to
Yeah.
bring things like, you know, some drinks, some food, if they want to, you know, bring a book to read in between or something like this. But also allowing, you're very good at it as well, because you communicate it with people around me when I'm at a really tough point in prep, where you're like, look, this is Sarah's day and it needs to be focused on Sarah. And I used to quite struggle with that, because I'd think, well, oh, you know, everyone's here and they're giving up their time. But I guess from your point of view, it was like, but I've seen what you've done to get here, so there needs to be some selflessness there.
Yeah. And the people that come to support you, that you know, they were all there for you, and it was your day. Yeah. And they knew, you know, exactly what you'd done to get there. I mean, it is a long day. You know, some of the competitions you wasn't on till sort of 7 in the evening, and we'd have to be there at sort of 9 for registration. You know, and you're watching other competitors, and then you go and get a drink. There's a big build up to it when it's federations like that, where it's not till the evening, whereas competitions did up after that. In the last few years, it was better in a way, because you knew what time, and it was earlier in the day, because again, it's a lot of anxiousness for you to have to wait all day. You know, but yeah, no, it's, to me, it's, that day was about, competition day is about the person that's competing. And you know, the people that want to be there are there for that reason.
Because we'd always treat it as like, we'd say it's like a mini holiday, wouldn't we? We'd be like Beb's on tour and get like
on tour,
t-shirts or taking your hand luggage and stuff. And I think that actually including you, with you wanting to be included, because you can tell if someone's actually interested in what you're doing. It's obvious, isn't it? So if you're sitting there all day moaning that it's a long day, it's not going to make the athlete feel valued. It's not going to make them feel like they, you know, you want to be there. So when you do little things to include yourself in their journey, it's a big thing that goes a long way. Like when you used to write me little post-it notes and things like that, like I don't think people realize how impactful that can be when you're finding it hard.
I'd always try and go online or go to shop and find a little card to give you the night before or on the morning of the day. It was just like for you to have a moment just to know, you know, few words can mean a lot.
Yeah, sure, it certainly can, because we're both believers in, you know what it's like in life. We talk about this. You have friends, and when someone says, oh, sorry, I forgot your birthday, I was going to get you something. Now, we're very, very similar, and I'm sure I've probably got this from you. If someone's your real friend and they wanted to get you something for your birthday, you'd prefer to have a note or a made card than no acknowledgement, because actually that's more special.
Yeah, because the day after, to me, it's too late. Unless there's a real reason, you know, like somebody had to go to hospital or something, where there's we go back to where there's a will, there's a way. You know, you make it happen, because it's one day. You know, it's one day, you make it special.
Because actually we've had conversations, haven't we, about, you know, friends that I've had in the past that have almost been a best friend in inverted commas, and you've said, well, why aren't they at your show? Have you heard from them? And I'm like, no. And you're like, okay, well, that's not on. And I think that you personally have found that quite hard to see how I invest a lot into people and then you don't get it back. I know that you felt that for me.
Well, yes, I do, because if you, like, people, as I say, true friends will be there no matter what. You know, no matter what, they'll make it happen. Even if money was short and you had to get tickets and pay for stuff like that, you know, I would like budget for that, because you know quite a lot in advance of when it's going to be. And I think that the people that do go are the people that are a true friend, is someone that will be there no matter what.
Yeah. And you share that
about there's friends and there's friends.
Yeah, for sure. I think that you can often see it before I can, being my mum, like you said about the judges, and I hadn't clocked that initially. Like, you're picking up things because you're my protector, as it were. So you're seeing how people operating around me and stuff. And actually it is hard in life, isn't it? Like, I talk about this a lot on social media and on the podcast, when you invest a lot of time into someone and you don't realize that actually they're probably taking the piss out of you to a certain degree if you're a nice person. And I know you found it. We've had conversations, and you know, you want to give people the benefit of the doubt. And a really good example actually that we could talk about, it's not bodybuilding related, but I remember you had a friend at work, and we don't need to name names, but she owed you some money and you were almost sort of not scared, but you were like, you know, this person owes me money. How do I deal with this? I work with them. And then she'd go and buy coffees and things like that. And it's like, but this person owes me money and she's meant to be a good friend. And we had a conversation, and this is why it's so valuable. And I said to you, text her saying, look, I need my money. And you ended up getting it, didn't you? And you were actually able to, you felt really empowered by that, didn't you?
I did, because I'd hummed and hawed for years about how to deal with it. And I thought we'd had that conversation. We were on the way back from being away. One of the, had we gone to a show?
Yeah.
You support someone. We were on the way back in the van, Papa was driving. And I said, actually, I'm going to do that. Yeah. I think sometimes, you know, I need a little bit of encouragement to press on with it. But, you know, if you don't do it, then it's not going to happen, is it? And we shouldn't feel bad to ask for something that we're owed either.
Yes.
You know.
Yeah, for sure. I would say I've seen in you a personal growth, even from that, what may seem small. From there, I feel like it almost unleashed a level of you knowing what your worth is, and that you can stick up for yourself. Because, you know, we both got bullied at school, didn't we? You know, we've had issues with men. We've had, you know, a lack of control in that regard. And I did an episode on like a victim mindset. So I went from one relationship to another of the same type of person, because I wasn't valuing myself. And I think that certainly for you, meeting Papa was a massive, massive change for you. But then little things like that, it's like, you're like, well, no, I'm not going to stand for this. And it's so cool to see, because like you said, we shouldn't have to feel bad for asking for something that we've done as a favor.
Yeah.
And when we talk about that, I think this is quite a cool example. So relating this to bodybuilding, when you spoke about taking my Tupperwares everywhere and stuff. Now, when you've had scenarios in the workplace where you felt almost a bit bullied and maybe targeted, that's something that was quite hard for you at first, wasn't it? But would you say there was some steps with mentally how you dealt with that to become more confident in your worth for where you work?
Yeah, I think it took a while, but I kind of, my mindset is that, hold on a minute, I count. Whereas I've never really sort of thought about myself. I count, and I don't have to put up with something that's unfair. So now I don't, and I will speak out if I'm not happy about something. So it takes quite a lot of courage, but yeah, now there's no stopping me.
It's crazy, isn't it? Because, like, you know, you're 60 now, and actually, you know, people listening to this, someone could be in their 20s saying, and they're resonating with facing conflict at work and things like this. Because I talk a lot about mental health around and outside of bodybuilding as well. And I think that sometimes even hearing you say that, and it's like, sometimes you probably think, well, I wish I'd done that earlier on. We can't turn back time, but I guess there's those thoughts as well as to, God, I wish I'd known my worth a bit earlier on, you know?
Hindsight's a very good thing.
Yeah. But what you can do is what, you know, I never think of you as being 60, because like when you come to shows, like you've dropped me at raves, you get involved with my friends, and always my friends say, I could literally hang out with your mum, like as a best friend. And that's something that's super, super cool, because you've got this, like, you're young at heart. It's almost like you're reliving that time when things were harder earlier on in life.
Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah.
Would you say in the workplace, when you sort of share that I do bodybuilding, you show photos and stuff, and you said about people sort of get involved, does it help give you almost like something to connect with people about being proud as a parent?
I think, yeah, I just have this thing, like, I just, when like people say, oh, my sister's whatever or my whatever, and I say, oh, do you want to see a picture of my daughter? And I show them, and it's like, they're like blown away.
Oh,
And they say, it's so pretty.
oh,
Oh my God, she looks absolutely amazing. And then I say about, that it's taken 5 years. It took 5 years for you to sort of get to a good point, very toned.
yeah.
And yeah, and I sort of tell them about how it's, you've got to be very committed with, like, food. There's no like, oh, one day I can't be bothered today. It's very, you've got to be very focused and have a lot of willpower. And then they say, oh, I can't do that. You can if you want to.
Yeah,
But
that's
yeah,
a,
so I do talk a bit. I show them photos, but I talk about, how long it's taken to get to the journey, and about how, you know, we're your entourage when you compete.
that's such a good point though, because it's certainly something that people don't probably realize. I didn't when I first started doing it. I thought it was just nutrition and training, and you've already touched on how it's so much more than that, and as we know, there's a lot that
Yeah,
goes into it. And
yeah,
what you said there is really cool, because that's come up organically, that actually a lot of people will look at what bodybuilding is and not be able to do it, but this can create conflict as well for people listening. When people are, it's hard to just say it's jealousy, but when people know that they can't do it, they can sort of lash out, can't they?
oh yeah, because like you can kind of tell, because some people will sort of like go, oh well, I want to talk about it, but other people won't. And
Yeah,
I'm not showing them because, oh,
yeah.
she looks amazing. It's about the achievement. It's about what it's taken for you to look the way you do when you've competed.
Mm.
It took a lot. It was a really hard journey, and there's lots of ups and downs. As you touched on earlier, mood swings, being on edge, all those kind of things.
Mm.
So it's so for people to understand it and to see you've achieved it in that industry of bodybuilding. It's not just something you've just done overnight. It took a lot of hard work, yeah, and people that, you can tell when people really want to talk about how comes you look like that.
Yeah.
And then I always say what I used to do when I was younger, but I don't want to show photos to take over Sarah's,
Yeah,
they
I'll let
laugh.
Sarah have the light. I always remember as well in the last prep, because of course it was the first prep that Matt saw me do, and he had very similar sort of thought processes to you with people from the outside, and he found it, I guess, quite hard emotionally to, he wanted to protect me as well, like you do. And when you sort of friendships were changing, and there's people that make comments like at the leisure center, what it was like there, and that type of stuff. And I think it's quite hard for him to not get angry about it and then upset me and make it worse, which is what you said earlier, let the dust settle and just let the athlete talk.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's the best way forward, yeah, because the last thing you want to say, oh, you did do well, because that's not probably how you're going to see it as the competitor, I think.
Yeah, for sure. And in the last prep in particular, now, how hard that was. It was the hardest one yet. And you probably
Yeah.
thought by now it would be like, well, it's cool, she's done this so many times. It's never going to go beyond how it's been hard before. Now, obviously we weren't living together at the time, but we'd meet for I'd have a black coffee or whatever. And I remember there was some conversations with you and Matt where it was like, is she okay? Now, I think that's probably something that people might do themselves, a partner and a parent, to try and do that. Did you find that quite easy to have those conversations with Matt?
Yeah, I just wanted to, because obviously, he was by your side, and I just wanted to sort of touch base and just sort of, rather than say to you, in a different have a different kind of conversation, just to sort of like check that you were okay, you know. So I'd have chats with you, but it was nice to be able to have a chat with Matt and just, you know, make sure that you're okay. Because, you know, even though, you know, when your marriage broke down, you were under so much pressure for so many ways, you still stayed focused. And I admire you for that. I don't know how you did that.
Oh,
You still trained, you still trained, you still cooked, you still, I think a good thing for you was getting out of the house and having the weekends away. Was good to be able to, like, in the last phases of being at the house, to cope, a coping mechanism. It was good.
I said I wasn't going to cry, didn't I? It's it's well, we've cried together, haven't we? Like when you actually look back on, you've been there as well in an unhappy marriage, and what that feels like every day when you're sometimes, you know, I'd be out walking the dogs, and this isn't me trying to gain attention or anything, but I'd think, well, why don't I just step in front of a car? Because, you know, you just think, well, there's no end in sight here. And I know that you've had that before in marriages as well. And it's really tough, but I do get people listening to the podcast that are in scenarios we've been in, and I talk about it a lot. But when you're in a marriage or a relationship and it's not right, what would your advice be? You know, if it's mental abuse, or okay, physical abuse is sometimes deemed as worse, but is there certain things other than, you know, putting things in place, as it were, when it's feeling really hard?
Yeah, I think nowadays, I think there is a way out. You don't have to stay in a relationship for the sake of the children, because, you know, to save face, because you don't want the marriage to fail, because when we get married we think it's for life. But there is a way out, and to not stay just for the sake of it. Like for you, you know, you walked out of financial security, etc. So I think, yeah, just knowing there is a way out. It may take a while, but don't ever think you have to stay just for the sake of whatever your situation is, because you don't, you know.
I think the almost the emotional abuse, which is essentially, it was emotional trauma with Kieran, it was never physical. I sometimes think that almost feels worse in a different way, because, you know, every day it's like you're subjected to emotional games. Now, you know what that's like from previous relationships. It fucks you up, doesn't it? Let's be honest.
Well, the actually emotional is worse than physical. If you were to have like a broken arm and someone say, "Oh, what happened to you?" Whereas like emotional, no one can see that. It's it's worse, the impact it has on you. It really is. You know, inside.
Yeah.
And how you deal with things. And like, as you know, I've had some setbacks where you've been there, to make me get out of bed, even.
Yeah.
You know, and I'll always be grateful for you being my support when times are tough for me, you know.
Yeah. And that is that team effort, isn't it? You know, we've both been there
Yeah.
for each other when things have been tough, because, you know, I don't think you really understand mental health until you, I don't want to say suffer, because that almost sounds like it's, you know, a bad thing as such. But when I watched, of course, you've had depression for the whole of my life, but I didn't really understand it. And that's me being honest. You know, I just thought that it was, you know,
You
period.
would, why would you? Yeah, why would you? You wouldn't,
Yeah.
you know.
And you kept the brave face on, you kept pushing through. And when you'd have times that were harder, I just thought, okay, mum's having a bad day. And I think that's, of course, a protection for your child. And then it wasn't until that time that you're talking about there, where it got to the point where you'd come off the medication for a bit, didn't you? And then we realized, actually, what's a very important message here is that you have depression, and you do need to have the medication, because some people, it's not just a case of, oh, I'm feeling a bit low. It's actually that we do need medication, and we've made that decision together as a team again. But that experience, you know, where, like you said, you couldn't get out of bed, but that would be really interesting to talk about a bit if you're comfortable to, because again, there's going to be people listening that will, maybe people listening that are thinking, have I got depression, or, you know, is there something wrong with me? What does it feel like to actually have depression when the medication stopped and that happened?
Well, I tried to come off the medication. I've got a hormone imbalance, so I tried to come off the medication because I didn't want to take it, because it's, you know, I didn't want to take it full stop. So I've tried it before, but it didn't work. So I tried coming off of it. And the impact of that is I spent 3 months in bed. I didn't want to wash. I didn't want to bath, you know, have a bath. I didn't want to eat. I didn't want to drink. I didn't want to do nothing. I just wanted to lay in bed 24/7. And at the end of, like, when it came up to 3 months was when you had some time out. I would lay in bed and go over the things like, well, you know, what about the mortgage? What about the house? How am I going to survive? What about my job? And I would just go over the same thing day in, day out.
Yeah.
And I realised that so if I have to take the medication, what does it really matter? If it means that I can live a normal life, go to work and function, then so I've had to accept that. I have to take the medication, whether I like it or not, because I tried to come off of it twice and it didn't work. And it has a real big impact when I have come off it, because how it's impacted people close to me, like you and Papa. And you feel guilty for that because you're drawing them into how you feel, because they see you, you know, you drifting away, in almost, for want of a better word, because I'd lost a lot of weight and I'd given up almost. But yeah, it's a horrible place to be. So now taking the medication, I'm fine, you know, works good, and I'm happy and I can live my life. So, you know, don't give up on it. It's, if it is suggested, try it, because it has been good for me. And also I did counselling over the years and I found that very helpful. Someone who's not emotionally linked, someone who's not close family, someone who doesn't know you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you need, because you don't want to talk to your close people about it, because you don't want them to feel. So sometimes it's good to talk to someone who doesn't know anything about you. And there's lots of places out there that you can go to, or like workplaces offer support. So I would say go with it. Yeah. It was a bad time and you got me through it.
Oh, Beth, it is. Yeah, when I can vividly see it like it was yesterday. And I remember we graduated it, didn't we? I don't know if you remember all of it, because like you said, you were drifting away, but we started by just getting you out of bed and to sit on the sofa. Then we started to feed, you know, give you food. So I'd spoon feed you, and you would literally just look forward at the TV, and I would put the spoon in your mouth and you would eat it, but it was almost like the function of eating you didn't want to do, I guess.
Yeah.
And then, like, almost going right back to, you know, learning the basics of how to live again and look after yourself. And then I remember the first time we went for lunch, and I remember thinking, people are probably going to think we're on a jolly because we're going for lunch and everything's all nice on the face of it. And this is important as well for people, because taking you out of the house to go and sit and have lunch, that was massive, wasn't it?
Yeah. I didn't want to do it. I didn't want to even sort of go outside, because Papa would say, well, come out while I cut the grass. I said, oh, I don't want anyone to see me.
Yeah.
You know, I wanted to hide away.
Yeah.
Not face anybody. So it was that was a real big, probably it's a lot bigger than some people would realise.
Yeah.
That sort of step, going back out into the world, as it were. Yeah,
for sure. And this also feeds into when we look at the challenges we've faced together throughout our life, and that being one of them. And I'd almost say, for me, it gave me more context in my job as a coach, because, you know, I got such an understanding into what depression actually is, because a bit like, you know, my back pain, I've started talking about that more now. And you don't really understand something until you see it firsthand, or you have it yourself. You get an understanding and then you can relate to people. But certainly with coaching, it's helped me through helping you, which is you know, it's a big thing in itself. And I think that your message is on the podcast as well. It's like offering someone hope when they're maybe really in a bad spot right now.
I literally didn't, I just didn't want to function. I don't say I didn't want to end my life or anything, but I just couldn't see a way out from how I was feeling in my mind. It's a bit hard to explain.
Yeah.
And I remember in previous times, you know, we'd have a chat and you'd say, oh, so and so's depressed and so and so's depressed. What's the matter with people?
Yeah.
But now you understand it's not something you have control of, unfortunately. And you go out and like people I would talk to now at work, you might get talking on a subject and I say, oh, work was really good to me when I was off. They like paid me, they were really supportive, they visited me. And, you know, people say, what, you? Depressed?
Yeah.
Are you joking?
Yeah.
Not Nikki. Yeah. Because they see that, you know, you put on this front, you shield it because you know, you don't want people to know. You don't want people to think, oh, she's mad or whatever.
Yeah.
Whereas now I can happily talk about it and I know it's not something I've got control over. It's just, it's part of life. And what I would say to people is, unless you've been through it, please don't judge, because it's hard. If you know someone going through it, just be there. Just be there as support if they want to talk.
Yeah, for sure. I guess there's that element of feeling like you're weak almost until you accept it. And you said that earlier, it was about acceptance. That's a really strong message, because with anything that you've got, so whatever, if it's a condition, whether that's, you know, physical or mental, the first part to sort of understanding it and coming to terms with it is accepting if it's part of you. And that's how I remember explaining it to you. So if you need medication because of a hormone imbalance, it's the only option. We've got to accept that. And you know, you're on your way to doing that. I remember actually, I haven't really spoken about Jamie, who's my brother, on the pod before, but what is a good talking point is when because he didn't believe in medication, did he? And he kept saying, stop taking it, and pressurizing you not to. How did that feel from a family member telling you not to do something that you felt like you did need to do?
Well, I remember he at that point when you were nursing me back to health, he came round with a book.
Yeah.
And he said the only way he was prepared to help me is if I would read the book and come off the medication. And I said, but I don't want to sit and read a book. And so he was not prepared to help me unless I came off the medication, which is quite a kick in the stomach, really, because, you know, he could have been more supportive in my decision. And, you know, he knew I tried to come off the medication and it wasn't working. So, you know, for him to sort of, it was like black and white. If you don't do this, I'm not going to support you, but if you do this, I will. It wasn't helpful. I was lucky that I had you to, you know, fall back on. Yeah.
It's hard, isn't it? Because I remember it. I remember it like it was yesterday. He wasn't listening. And I think what's quite nice to talk about it is that people may face a similar scenario with one person telling them something, one person telling something else. But you, like you said there, that was your decision, and staying true to what you feel is right. And actually, I love data when I'm working with people. So the data is that you need the medication. So he just wouldn't listen though. And that's quite hard in itself. But of course, it's another level of conflict, isn't it? You know, you've always said to me, you can't choose your family, but you can choose your friends, but choose your friends wisely, because it's so true.
Yeah. But the thing is, if I came off the medication, I saw what it did. So then to me, I'm not existing.
Yeah.
So the reality is, having the medication daily, I can exist and do everything that I normally do. And, you know, everything's good. So to me, it's a no-brainer.
Yeah, for sure.
You know, the decision's made, really.
Yeah.
Do I want to let everything around me sink, which it would,
Yeah.
or do I want to pick myself up and turn this around, which is what I did. Yeah, I do feel responsible for the impact it's had on you, seeing me.
No, don't, Beb. No, it's like I said, we're both starting now. For me, it's helped me understand it more. So like you said, with, you know, I used to think, well, what are these people moaning about? And that was certainly as a young person, because you don't know, you don't understand. And I certainly didn't know who I was myself either. Like I just didn't,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
and then you sort of almost don't want to understand people, because, you know, from a young age, there was drugs involved, there was alcohol, there was, you know, several traumas during that time, and it's hard to take yourself out of that and not lash out at other people, because you're not in control of your own life. And I think we've probably both we've both put on a brave face. Like I've referenced it on the pod before, when you had 8 jobs to feed us, and you know, when you say about the impact on me, I watched you do that for me, and then that was, I could do something back for you, and that's how it's gone through our life. Like
Yeah.
even
Yeah.
really hard times, you know.
Yeah.
And I've spoken about in the podcast before, when, you know, I went through the first relationship where there was, you know, I was smoking a lot of weed and stuff like that. I mean, from your point of view, I referenced it as I thought I knew best, and you wanted to try and obviously steer me, and you could see that relationship with Daryl was incredibly detrimental to me, and I was very young. How did that feel, you know, when as a parent seeing that, because you knew you couldn't control it as such?
Very, very difficult. As you say, I knew it was the wrong path.
Yeah.
But I think, you know, obviously I was a single parent.
Yeah.
And it's very hard because you can't physically make someone stay in their room.
Yeah.
And however hard it was, and however emotionally it was for me, is I had to let it happen. And that's made you the person you are today. When you said to me before, you've said, "Oh, I'm sorry I was a cow," and how, you know, and I said to you, you don't have to be sorry.
Yeah.
Growing up is about learning boundaries, about learning life skills, what's right, what's wrong.
Yeah.
And that's what's made our relationship what it is today, allowing you to be you, for you to work it out for yourself.
Yeah.
Because we've all been through things that we're not proud of, we maybe shouldn't have done. But at the time, you know, a lot of people I know best, as you said.
Yeah.
So yeah, it very, 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 very hard, because when you just don't know what to do for the best.
Yeah.
But I had to let it you work it out in your own way, in your own time. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I look back and I think about actually what that would have looked like as my parent, I'm like, fucking hell, that must have been so hard. And it's so true. When you're that age, and people that are older than you, they say, when you're my age, you'll understand. And it's someone that's like maybe only 30, and you're like, oh, it's a load of shit, I know what's best. And then now I'm 34, I'm like, God, I wish I'd listened to that advice. But everyone says that, don't they? And it's not until you get older. But I value all those lessons, like, you know, the period of time when I was homeless, and then we reconnected, and, you know, it was all affiliated with the drug use and things like this, and it all got out of hand, didn't it? And it was a hard time, but I have such an appreciation. I actually said to Matt yesterday, it was really weird, I don't know how we started talking about it, but I was making some food, and I said to him, do you know what, when I'm cooking, you know, the chicken and the fresh vegetables, because we have, like, you know, nice produce out here in Thailand, I feel really grateful, and I'm like smiling while I'm making the food. And I said to him, I turned around and I was like, I think it's maybe because when I was homeless, I didn't know if I would eat again, and, you know, you're trying to find shelter and stuff. I wonder if that's why, like, you know, I've got this real appreciation for just like a fresh chicken breast. But it's lessons, isn't it, and gratitude.
But the little things in life mean so much. Yeah, it does make you it does make you appreciate things. Yeah. You can't put an old head on young shoulders is a very true saying again, which a lot of people probably heard. and you can't, and you have to, you have to learn, learn for yourself, and that makes you the person you are today. In challenges that you've crossed along the way, hurdles you've jumped. But the funny thing is that you didn't like walking to school or even using the bike.
Or drinking water.
Yeah, or drinking water. Anything to do with any of that was a no-no.
Yeah.
An absolute no-no. So to go from that to like when you start doing bodybuilding, it was like tenfold. It was totally, A 40-mile cycle now would be nothing. Whereas
it is actually funny, isn't it? Because when you look back, I sort of describe it as, it was almost like I went from one scenario to another, but I always liken it to, I felt like there was something inside me, and I think it derives from watching you fight through all of the challenges you faced growing up, and like I say, 8 jobs to get food on the table, being able to run the house as a single mum and everything that involved. I always felt like something good's coming there, and I was like, I don't know what it is. And when I found bodybuilding, I was like, it must be this. And then when I won the first show, I remember the next day I woke up and I was like, I'm next to Kieran thinking, I fucking hate this person. Oh, my life's still the same. This isn't the good that's coming. What am I going to do? So I keep going. And it's not till now I'm like, a bit like you and Papa. It's like, was it that I was meant to meet Matt and we start our life very much like you and Pete did, for sure?
Yeah. Oh, definitely. Yeah.
I don't think you would have actually predicted that you could be this happy in a relationship if we look at your past relationships.
No, definitely not. No, I can just be myself as and when, and like he's away fishing at the moment. Back tonight. Yeah, absolutely fine. We do things together apart, but yeah, he's my soulmate and he understands me.
Yeah.
So if I have a bad day, he's not judgmental.
Yeah.
He just locks himself in the cupboard.
Or you lock him in the cupboard. It's so funny, isn't it? Because, there definitely was that change in you as a person. And I think that I often felt like being alone might be better and I need to be independent. Again, something we share. We'll always do it ourselves because the job gets done, right? Like it's like, well, I'll do it. And certainly in life, it's something I speak to clients about. If you have, a household of children, husband, whatever, and they don't want to do something and they let you do it all, if you ask them to do it, they're probably going to do a bad job, so that you go, oh, fuck it, I'll do it. And actually, sometimes we've got to prioritize, ourselves a bit more and give people responsibility. But I know we both really struggle with that, don't we? Because it's like, well, I'll do it.
Yeah. And trouble is you make it harder for yourself.
Yeah.
Because that's a famous thing, that they do it wrong, knowing that you'll say, oh, you're not doing it right, I'll do it.
Yeah.
But I think you're probably like me in a lot of ways, that I just always want to help people. I'd rather not have myself, and I'd rather go out now and buy for everybody else, because I don't need anything.
Yeah.
And it's hard to get out of that mindset to think, well, actually, no, you need to treat yourself.
Yeah.
It's hard to do that. Yeah.
It is very hard, because we said about it earlier, when you sort of come away from friendships, you think, I can see good in this person, and actually we become quite blurred in what is good in a person. When you step away from relationships, you look back and you think, what the hell was I doing? And I'm talking about friends and actual relationships, and you think, why did I put up with that? And it's something I try and talk about a lot, because I had a message today on Instagram from a lady that, she saw a friend go through some conflict. And I said, do you think that these people that are starting on your friend, are they her friends? Because, maybe they're not actual friends, but in your mind, from, from where you are in life, and now you've got this sort of renewed value in yourself. If you had a friend and you felt like maybe it wasn't, you know, a give and take relationship and you were getting something from it, would you just try and like slowly graduate away, or would you just cut it off?
No, I think I would just cut it off.
Yeah.
Because I've gone down that road of trying to sort of like please people, and then them saying, well, I've done this for you and I've done that. It's not about I've done 6 things for you and you've done 2 things for me. It's nothing. It shouldn't not be about that. I've experienced that, and I've hung on to the last thing and then realised. Whereas now, there's no, that's it, cut and dried, because otherwise it can impact you. And if you're of the mindset that no, I'm not taking it anymore, that's it, I'm going to nip it in the bud straight away, then I think, you know, that's better for you mentally to do that.
Yeah, because actually, how draining is it? You know what it's like when you've had it, I've had it, where you arrange to meet someone, or you're, you know, messaging someone and you don't actually want to be friends with them. Like, it's so draining, isn't it?
Yeah, because you think you have to, sort of thing.
Yeah, yeah.
I haven't seen them for a while, I better message and we better meet up.
Yeah.
But true friends, it doesn't matter if you don't see them for 6 months and then suddenly you say, do you want to meet? If it's a true friend,
Yeah,
they'll be there. And it won't be, well, you haven't bothered me for the last whatever, so why should I? It won't be that. They will be there day and night, anytime.
yeah. Because like you
Yeah.
said, with us moving to Thailand, you know, being so far away from you, and you said, you know, we've had our video call, we're doing the podcast today, and we're going to schedule calls, you're going to come over when we get married, and this type of thing, you know, like you say, you don't lose contact, we text and things like that, and it doesn't mean that person's not with you if we're not at a point in our relationship where we need to go hi, because we know we're each other's there, and it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to always just talk when something bad's happening. It can just be like, hi Beb, how are you today, you know?
Yeah.
But you don't, I think one of the telltale signs is you don't read into things in the wrong way when it's the right relationship.
Yeah. It's hard not having you close by, but then, like I've said to you, is, you know, you need to live your life, and if opportunities come up, and that's what, you know, now you've got this new, you know, you're with Matt, you're actually happy now, the world's your oyster, and you can do, you know, have fun, you know, venture.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's certainly something we probably shared more as I came away from the marriage about. We always had fun on our trips, going to the shows and everything, but there was obviously that in my own mind, Kieran would be there and whatever. And I know sometimes there's, you know, confrontation there where he'd flip his lid, and then, you know, you'd feel upset for me. And then there's this like sort of, you know, really dramatic. We had that many times, didn't we? And I remember the time actually when he pushed back, when he said, what do you want for breakfast? And it was a show when we were there for a show abroad, and I said, can I have 10 boiled eggs so I can have the egg whites without the yolk, and a cup of tea? And when I trained in the morning, got to the cafe, didn't I, and the tea was cold, so I was like, oh, it's cold, and I wanted 10 eggs, and I think there's only like 6, and he just flipped his lid, didn't he?
Yeah, he flipped on, and I tried to say to him, Sarah's trying to say, and then he sort of turned on me and he stormed off, didn't he? And it creates a lot of negativity, you know, around a time when you're going through pressured time anyway, because you've got a show the following day, and to have all this negativity around you, you know, it's and for me to see it from the outside, you know, it was difficult. Yeah, it was difficult.
Yeah. I think probably your protector mode is enhanced, of course, because of, like I've touched on, being homeless for that period of time, and then going through using drugs, etc. And of course, what happened with Dad, I actually did an episode on that, which was a quite a teary one, of course, because I've sort of delved into more of sharing my personal life to help others that maybe go through similar scenarios or experience something of that nature. And, you know, I know that we've got a very strong bond because when you found out what had occurred, and you know he did get it didn't go through court, but he got taken to court for suspected being a paedophile, you know, you felt an element of a lack of control, because I remember you saying, how did I let this happen? But it wasn't your fault. And I know you can see that now.
Yeah, it's hard. Yeah.
Because I guess I would say for years, like, you were almost trying to be a good mum and prove yourself to yourself in a way, do you think?
Yeah, I think I was trying to overcompensate by being dad and mum.
Yeah.
And making everything nice and happy and as it could be, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, because actually when I was at school, people thought that we lived in the posh area, and I always had the nice trainers, you know, and you always made sure you go above and beyond to make sure we had the nice things. And people thought we were sort of like this posh family with loads of money, but actually in the background you've got your ironing jobs, doing the newspapers and all of this stuff alongside a normal job, just to be able to put that brave face on. And now being at this point where we both don't have to prove ourselves anymore, it's like it's freedom, isn't it? It's like I feel free finally, you know.
Yeah. I remember you said to someone once, did we get this jumper at the charity shop or the car boot sale?
But it's even like it's stuff like that. Like, I have freedom of speech around you now. Something I've spoken about on the podcast before we wrap up is my experience with recreational drugs, because again, it's something that can be quite taboo, because people see drugs as bad, don't take them. But then of course you've got that other side of, you know, alcohol and things like that. People do that because you can buy it in a shop. It's like, oh well, that's fine. And you of course have your own story of alcohol and your mum being an alcoholic and what that brought. And I've shared sort of what my experiences are on recreational drugs. And I remember even times, every time I'd go to a rave on New Year's Eve, I'd phone you at 12 and, you know, I'd be high and you knew about it. Now, I think personally, me being able to tell you that that was what I was going to do because it gave me freedom, I really enjoy it, I'm really safe. It's like you say, if you were to tell me not to do something, I could end up doing it in an unsafe way, and there could be big repercussions from that, couldn't there?
Yeah, and I think, you know, you said to me the reason I tell you is because I don't want to keep it from you.
Yeah.
And whatever my thoughts are, is it's your life, but feeling that you can say it to me is good, because that's what I want to be as a mum, that you can tell me anything and I won't judge.
Yeah. I always explain to you why I'm doing stuff, don't I? And this is heavily related to bodybuilding. If you tell people what it means to you, I think that they understand it more from your point of view. So when I'm short on mood or things happen in a prep, you can go, I know why she's doing this. She really wants to challenge herself for X, Y, and Z reason. And I think it helps to form that relationship of that mutual respect, would you say?
Oh yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely.
For
sure. I think that's really cool. Yeah.
Now, I think a good way to wrap it up would be, I just thought of it when you said about the charity shop. In the queue in the chemist that time, when I was a teeny little child, what I said to you when you were getting some cream. Let's share the story, because I talk about everything on the podcast, and I think this would just be hilarious.
So I had thrush, and Sarah came into the bedroom. She was only, I'd say she was about 3. And she said, "What are you doing?" And I said, "Oh, Mummy's got a Paulie Mini." So when we went to the chemist to get some cream, she went up to an elderly pensioner in the queue and said, "My mummy's got a Paulie Mini. It's really, really poorly." Oh, I wanted the ground to sink. Oh dear. And then she went on to someone else, and I had to get her out the shop.
I love that. It seems that from a young age, I've been able to say whatever I feel. So I would say that's a good parenting skill there.
But one other thing was, we were in B&Q. I think it might have been a different name then. And you said, Mummy, I want the toilet. And I said, just wait a minute. And then all of a sudden you said, there's no toilet paper. And I said, what do you mean as though you had a wee on the one of the toilet models in the shop? So I had to go and find one of the managers to say to him, every time my daughter's had a wee. Oh dear.
Luckily, it wasn't a number 2.
Yeah.
I love that. Oh my God. So funny. I'm so glad we did this episode, because I think that, well, we've obviously talked about a lot, but I think that people will maybe get a bit more insight into me as to where my morals as a person come from, because of course I talk about you a lot, and actually even talking about what you've faced and how you are now when you reflect on what you maybe could have, you know, the lessons you could have learned and how that goes into everyday life. So it's been super cool. Like, I know we were both like, we'll talk about these things, but just see where it goes. So thank you, Mama Beb. I love you.
Thank you, Sarah. I love you too.
I will speak to you guys soon. Thank you for listening. And of course, if you want to share it on your Instagram stories, or Mum doesn't have Instagram, but you can send me messages and I can pass them on, because I'm sure she would love to hear it. And I will see you all next week. Bye.
Bye.
Hey.